Okay, so we've got some of our sub-assembly done. We're ready to start assembling the nest system. You're going to take your barn. If you've got a barn with a single nest down the middle of the barn, you're going to center it in the middle of the barn, get your barn width, divide that in half. Your nest is, the framework is 62 inches, I believe. Get it so you've got the side, one side of the nest, measure off the wall out to where that point is. In our case here in our training area, we've got 90 inches. So we're going to measure off the wall to our 90 inch. That will be our left-hand side of the nest. And then we'll chalk a line from those two marks to make sure we've got a straight edge to assemble by and make sure everything lays out straight. Doing 90 inches to be center of the room that we've got to work with. Okay, so now we've got our line on our marks. We're going to flick the line so we've got a line to base off of for our nest.
Before we move on to assembling the frame, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the cross braces. This is the universal cross brace that you'll use throughout the nest. It's easily identifiable by these large slots on the top. Those are used to locate the divider walls between the nests. Now the reason they're so wide is that the nest can expand and contract with thermal stress. So we allow them to float a little bit to take up and release that stress throughout the nest. However, there are some places in the nest that undergo more stress than others. So at those places, we want to anchor those divider walls in place to prevent it from shifting and strengthening the nest a bit more. So to do that, we have our idler cross brace right here. So this one is easily identifiable by the two large holes here that are not present in the universal cross brace. You'll also see that these already have some slots built into them. So the divider wall just slots right in here and is locked into place. So the idler is a place of large stress, but there are two other places in the nest where we want to lock it down. We want to do it at the end and the beginning of each nest row, meaning adjacent nests without a crossover. We also want to use it on either end of the expeller. There's a lot of stress there. So rather than complicating things with many different cross braces for many different situations, we just went with these two models and we created these two adapters. These adapters just bolt on very easily. The small ones go here like so, and the large ones go here like so. And then you'll just sink the bolts through as you would while assembling the frame. The reason we're talking about it now is that these are self-tapping bolts that we use. So once you put them in and you try taking them out, they can weaken and not hold as well. So if the idea is you locate where you need to put these while you're assembling the frame and install them now so you don't have to go back, take things apart and do it later. This is our nest in our training barn. So this isn't going to look anything like your nest, just bear with me. I just want to show you the locations where you would want to install these brackets. So if you look at these two nests here, this is what we would consider a nest row. There are two adjacent nests. This is the end of belt here. On the other end is belt transfer. So we would want to install these here. However, if you come around here, you can see that there's an idler on this end of the nest. So we're already using the idler cross brace. We don't need the adapters. It's already locked in and we're good. So then moving down, this is in the center of the nest row, so that's fine. We use the universal cross brace there. Here is the end of the nest row. There's no idler here, so we do want to use these adapters. You can see we've already installed them here. You'll want to make sure they go on top of the cross brace, but underneath the front rail. So moving on to this section of the nest, you'll see we have the end of the nest row here, but there's an idler. This is the idler cross brace. You can see the small slot here, so we're good here. Moving down, this is the expeller. This is the other case where we'll need to install these. So you will want to install these brackets on this cross brace and on this cross brace. And then moving down to the end of the nest, this is the end of this nest row. Goes into a crossover from here. So, and there's no idler anywhere, so we're going to want to install these brackets on this cross brace.
Okay, so we've gotten our legs and our cross arm assemblies all put together. That can be an assembly to get those all done before you even start putting your frame system together. Our first cross arm here is basically going to be up against your egg room or your packing room wall. So there'd be a wall right here, and we're going to add our legs and our leg cross supports in on here. Okay, so we built our first couple sections there. It's just going to be a repeat of the same thing over and over again. The only exception to that is where your expeller sections are going to be. You'll have to look at your layout, and every barn setup is going to be different. Basically, there's 4 holes in our cross arms. We've already used 2 of them. We're going to use a self-threading screw or bolt. We're just going to line that up. 2 on the other side. So then we're going to just repeat that same process on both sides of the nest until we get to our expeller section, and then that will be a different panel section that goes in there. So our leg to rail brace, it's universal for both sides. Our angled piece is going to go down at the leg. We're going to slide this inside using this larger hole here. And that's all that you do. You're just going to repeat that process with the same angle on every leg throughout the system. Okay, so now we are going to our expeller section in our display model here. And just for display purposes, we went from a smooth front to a slat rail front, to be able to hang your slats on that edge, just to demonstrate the 2 different styles that we have. So again, we're just going to put the bolts in just like we did on the smooth. Because of the expeller, we're going to use 2 feet down from, in our layout, we want the expeller to set right here. And then we'll put another leg set on the end just like we was with the others, and duplicate the same thing on the other side. Okay, I just want to do a little review of basically what we're doing for our display model here. We started out, right here is where our front wall of the chicken area would be. So this would be our first section, which is a crossover section. And then we're putting in two nest sections. And on this first 3 sections of the nest frame, we're using the flat front of the nest. And then once we get past our first 3 sections, we're putting in our expeller section. So our expeller drive will set here, and we're changing over to what we would call the slat front. So you can hang or set the slat on there for using our system with the slats. But so you got your expeller section, and then we'll have another nest. So once we get our expeller section and our next section is our transition section, which is a secondary drive for the egg belt. So this would be a crossover with an egg belt drive underneath the crossover. And again, we're still using the slat front. And then we've got 2 more nest sections, and then we'll have our return idler on the very end, which you can see that there's 3 slots in the cross arm and extra holes through, versus 1 big hole and no holes through the cross arm. So there's no hole here, and this is 1 big hole instead of 3 small slots. Okay, so I am going to start out here. We're going to put our idler assembly on for our egg belt return roller. We've got a bracket that gets mounted onto the back here. We've got 2 brackets that get mounted onto this. You want to do that first. Once you put everything together, it's really hard to get the bolts in. We're using a carriage head bolt and a nut. We want to put the bolt in from the top and then put our nut on the bottom side. So then I'm going to flip it over and put our nuts on. Our brackets bolted onto there. We've got our bearing assemblies here. I've already put a nut and a washer, and we've got 2 different size spacers that we use in this assembly. The long one, there's 2 different sizes. The long one goes towards the bearing. We're going to put our threaded bolt through there. We're going to use our short one through this plate, and then I'm going to bring that through. Okay, so I'm going to put a washer and a nut on here, and we just, at this time, we just want to kind of finger loose. We want to have a little give in there. I'm going to take the other side of it. I'm going to put the long spacer on it. I'm going to swing this up. So I've got my short spacer going inside. I'm going to put that through my washer and my nut. Okay, so now we've got our idler roller, which looks like a plastic auger, which in reality is what it is. We're going to go to our bearing assembly. We want to make sure that the flange nuts, the nuts holding the flange on, are on the outside so they don't interfere with the belt. We're going to come to the other side, line that up. We're going to slide that over. We're going to roughly center that. It's not that you have to have it measured exactly, but eyeball it so it's centered. We're going to take our locking collar. So the inside has a lip inside here, and the outside is smooth. We're just going to slide that on, and if you twist that, you're going to feel it lock onto that bearing. We're going to take our Allen wrench, snug up the set screw. Going to do the same thing on the opposite side. The smooth side goes out, the lip goes in. We're going to turn that. You're going to feel the collar lock onto the bearing. We're going to snug up the set screw. Okay, so we've got another shaft that we put into the assembly here. We're just going to fish it in one side, back the other side. It's just a nut and a bolt. You want to take the bolt from the auger side through the bracket. Keep the nut to the inside. This will help later on if you ever have maintenance that you need to take the shaft out. You will be able to pull the shaft out without having to disassemble the entire nest system. You'll do the same thing on both sides of that shaft. Okay, so this is our weighted belt take-up section. So the bottom side of your egg belt goes through here. You put a weighted roller in between these two so it pulls any slack out, and then it goes on down the nest system. So this one is complete other than having the belt and the weighted roller in. I've got another one farther up in the system. We're going to go ahead and show you how that assembles. Our weighted roller section for our belt take-up. We are going to use the self-threading bolts again. So we've got our one side in, we're going to put the other side in, but on these brackets, you've got a larger flange on the bottom, and then the top's got a shorter flange, and we have a series of holes. The series of holes goes to the bottom in the system. So our next step after we have our rails in, there's our rollers, and there's a shaft that goes through the rollers. For me, it's easiest to put it in from the end, and it's not a solid shaft or roller all the way through, so you've got to line it up the two sides. Put our shaft in, we're gonna put our washer on. We're gonna go 4 holes back. We're going to line that up. We're gonna put our washer on the opposite side. So you're gonna have your washer in there, you're gonna pull your shaft back just enough to be able to get past the plate, but not lose the washer. And then once you get it lined up with the hole, you're gonna even that up on both sides. So we're gonna take a bolt and a nut, and we're gonna just get that started down here. And then we're gonna take another locking collar. This one's a little different than what we do on the other end for the idler roller. It's got a gap in here, and by tightening the set screw here, it will clamp it down and tighten onto the shaft. The other thing that we're gonna do is this bolt down here screws into the bottom of it to keep it from spinning. So we're going to carefully slide this on. Okay, so we've got the collar slid on. The biggest trick here is getting that lined up with that threaded slot in the bottom. You're going to screw that bolt all the way up into there. Once it's there, we're going to tighten that up just to lock it into place. Next thing you're going to do is tighten down the set screw here to go ahead and lock that collar onto the shaft. Okay, so this one here, I'm just doing the same thing on the other side. I'm sliding my collar on, and I'm going to put my bolt in, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take another roller assembly, do the 4 holes back, and do the same thing there. Once we've used our chalk line to get our frame system relatively close, we've added a string. We clamped it on up here. We slipped a bolt in here at the front and also at the back. You've got bolt heads and different things here, so that's our reasoning for using that bolt to get the string away. And then we just use another bolt and go on down through there. And basically at every seam, make sure that you're within a good tolerance there so that bolt width is the same all the way down through the system. Get you good and straight. Along with getting everything straight, we want to make sure it's all level as well. So if you can get a long level and go from cross arm to cross arm, get yourself at your good starting point, get yourself level, make sure you level both sides. The foot adjustment on the bottom, you can raise and lower that to accommodate what is needed. So we've got our foot assembly down here on the bottom of the leg. When you come to leveling things up, you've got your very bottom nut that's holding tight to the true foot. And then there's a nut on top and below the actual leg bracket. That's where you're going to adjust that up and down. And then once you get it leveled and exactly where you want to make sure all those nuts are good and tight.